Hello class, this is just a quick video that will outline some of the things that you could look at as we begin our writing on our first major film, Fritz Lang's Metropolis. So here's just a list of the major characters. We don't need to go over them all because we just watched the film, but if you're writing about it or want to figure out which are some of the characters and you're not quite sure, you can't quite remember this PowerPoint will have them there for you to look at. So as we talked about, the great city that we see in the film was based on New York, and the premise of the film is a warning about Germany in the future. The issues that Fritz Lang saw as inherent problems, especially problems of class relations, and the growing sort of mechanization of factories and the growing elements of technology. He thought that was a real problem, and his film is sort of acts like a warning to that, to the people who'd be viewing it in Germany at the time. So, now that we've watched the film, let's look at some of the key major themes. One thing to remember before we talk about the themes, however, remember that since this is a film class, one of the key things we want to do is analyze how the film form, the unique aspect of making movies, helps us understand these themes. So these themes that we're going to talk about don't just exist. The form of the film, the filmmaking techniques that Lang and his staff used are what help us understand these themes present in the movie. First, and probably the biggest one, is class inequality. The futuristic city of Metropolis is built quite literally on the inequality of working class and rich elites. For Lang, the city of the future was synonymous with exploitation, power, corruption, and greed. Now note, when we think about the heart and the head, and that character of the mediator that must bring the two together, Fritz Lang is not arguing for a complete removal of the capitalist system of work. It's not a socialist film in any way. It is, however, trying to understand how the two elements of classes can have a better, more equitable relationship. So it's that they are distinct, they are separate classes, but for a society to function, there needs to be a mediator so that these classes of people can speak to each other. So that's kind of an important point. It's not about the removal of class, it's about balancing the relationship. Rotwang, the evil scientist character who creates the machine man, is the true villain of the film, whose creation makes the classes more inward focused and self-destructive. So even Freder's father, Joe Fredersen, who is kind of a big jerk throughout the movie, he's not the true villain. Remember, the movie ends with him finally being able to, through his son, shake the hands of the workers. Like, he kind of learns a lesson on how to treat his workers. So he's not the true villain. Rotwang is the true villain because he wants to bring the whole thing crashing down. He wants to destroy the society. Next is an awakened consciousness. Essentially, the idea about the mediator is all about raising the consciousness of the nation. All right? Opening your mind to the way things really work. All right? So, one of the things that Metropolis does is have these characters understand with a clearer mind the ideology, broadly speaking, that they grew up in. Freder, for example, is someone who, at the very beginning of the film, we see his consciousness awakened. All right, when he sees Maria and the children, and his kind of love for Maria ends up becoming the thing that really awakens his consciousness to the reality of privilege that he lives in, and that he needs to get out of that. Additionally, Maria's class consciousness leads her to teach the workers that they are, in somewhat, being exploited, and that they need a mediator to speak for them to reconcile the use of their labor with the elites and how the elites are profiting off of it. Note again, Lang is not some revolutionary figure, so the idea that the workers could not find the mediator amongst themselves is a sort of problematic issue with this notion of awakened consciousness. Like, the workers themselves can't fully awake, right? The person who does that still has to come from the privileged elite. So just always remember, as a critique of capitalism and class issues of society, Lang is not a neo-Marxist or revolutionist, an anti-capitalist person. Next, big theme, the danger of industry and mechanization. So as we see throughout the film, we have plenty of examples of the workers becoming like machines themselves. Their movements are very machine-like. When we see them working in the factory, they're like pulling levers like they are just robots doing brainless, mindless working. You know, Freder is literally moving the hands on that weird clock machine. And so the industrialization of the world, which would be very prevalent around the time the film was made, was a great concern that they were having this mechanization of society, and we were all becoming faceless cogs in the machine. Obviously, we could see this played out more clearly in The Machine Man, or as I like to call her, Robo Maria. She is one of the most villainous characters in the film, and one of the most villainous acts is Rotwang's turning a person into the machine. Although Maria doesn't become the machine, you know, he kind of extracts her essence as a human and perverts it, makes it evil. And so, you know, literally turns the machine into a twisted doppelganger of a person. Next up would be Idealism. It's a very idealistic film. The whole nature of the head, the hands and the head have to be mediated by the heart. That's a very idealistic thing, that we don't need to change society. We don't need to change the class structures that we see in the film. What we need is a smart person to come and sing kind of kumbaya and bring us all together. So, you know, one of the reasons why we can say Lang is not kind of a revolutionary critic of capitalism and capitalist society is this kind of idealistic approach he has to the issue, which is, if we just have if our intelligent elites, our scientists, businessmen, bankers, the head, if it just is more sympathetic towards the workers, then we don't need to change anything. We don't need to change the workers' lives. We don't need to change their ability to advance. We don't need to change the fact that we have distinct classes in society. We just get along better. So it's a very idealistic film as well. So, in the next video, we're going to look at how those themes can show up using some of the film techniques. We're not going to talk about each one, but just remember, as we think about the paper and writing about Metropolis, one of the key things that you're going to want to do is understand how the fundamentals of film, all right, camera movement, light, action, sound, you know, how those help us understand what's going on in the movie. So we will discuss that in video 2.